anytime somebody has an idea or a thought or a PowerPoint or a vision, how can they make that a reality? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional way of project management. There are different ways. And so how do we learn about those? I've really instilled that kind of thinking in our organization and in different ways. One way is a mindset shift. And you might hear now, as you start to talk to more and more project management folks across the globe, this concept of 10x. And what I mean by 10x is a mindset shift. What if we could, whatever we're talking about, what would it look like if it was 10 times bigger? What would it look like? What would it need to do if it was 10 times bigger? It doesn't necessarily have to be revenue or scale. It just 10x in thought process. Hello, Jan. My name is Sunil Prashara. I'm the president and the CEO of the Project Management Institute.
Sunil, thanks so much for finding time to join us on the Ivy podcast today. Personally, my close network, they know how excited I am about this episode, mainly because of my background in project management. I have led multiple PMOs for different organizations. So this is a great opportunity, for me to pick your brain, to learn a little bit more, to get some of your, thought leadership on what's coming up next. So I'm super pumped. Tell us a little bit more about your background, previously, your career, if you just give us a little intel from that standpoint.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I've been with the Project Management Institute now coming up to the end of my second year. But prior to that, I was running my own company. It was like a digital startup, really helping startup companies to accelerate their sales processes and help them really sort of stand up against a lot of competition that's out there. A lot of companies, starting off and they need a lot of help in that space. So I've been busy for 2-3 years building that business up. And then prior to that, I'd worked with Vodafone in an operational role. And with Nokia, so the telco sector predominantly. At Nokia, I was the global head of sales. So I had a profession really in sales. And prior to that, actually, for 10 years, I was a finance guy. I'm actually a qualified accountant. And I worked for a chap called Ross Perot for 10 years as his finance guy for a company called Perot Systems. And so I started off my career in finance. 10 years in finance, became the CFO of Perot Systems Europe, then moved into sales, spent several years in sales. I was very lucky, did very well in sales and became the global head of sales at Nokia. I loved that job. That was great, learned a lot there. And then with Vodafone, it was more operational stuff. So got involved in a lot of operations. That's where I really discovered the power of project management in that role. I didn't realize that even as a finance guy, and as a sales guy, I'd been running projects. I just didn't realize that they were just never called projects. They were called sales engagements, or they were called in year-end process or something, And it wasn't until I got into operations in Vodafone that I realized that actually, everything that I'm doing is a project in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And then using that skill to start my own company. And then PMI came along because I was very happy with the work that I was doing in my startup. But I felt that PMI could really amplify what I was advocating in my company and take it to a different level. And that was really what attracted me to PMI. And I've been there for the last 2 years.
Wow. What an exciting journey. It just proves the point of how omnipresent project management is, that it's really, it's not, specific to any industry or any particular trade. It's even in our personal lives, we do project management on a daily basis. So that's pretty exciting. Thanks for sharing that, a little bit of kind of that career journey. One topic that I'm super excited about evolves around innovation. Building cultures of innovation, fostering, that culture of experimentation. I spent a lot of time studying that, talked to a lot of executives from different strategies, how to do that. From PMI standpoint, I'm heavily involved with PMI myself, just being PMP and all of that great stuff. I see a lot of, different initiatives, a lot of great, strategies and different projects that are underway to really make the PMI kind of that standard, and from not only the governing board, but from innovating in the space of project management.
Indeed.
Curious to get your take on how do some practical strategies around really fostering that culture of innovation within a global organization such as PMI.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible topic, because a lot of people would think that, okay, the project management industry is really structured. It's really sort of, it's been really, a PMI have been around for 50 years, right, as an organization, and the PMP has been around for that period of time, and it's very structured, and it's very methodical, and it's tried and tested, and we know that techniques and methods within there, if applied in the most appropriate way, will generate a better chance of you succeeding in your project. We know all of that. And however, the world moves on, and the world continues to develop and change, and technology has played a huge part in changing the way work is being done, has been done in the past, and continues to be done, and now is accelerating even further. So even the project management profession is evolving and requires new thought leadership and new thinking. Layer on top of that technology change, the fact that there are new ways of working anyway, the emergence of agile, the emergence of hyper agile, or the democratization of application development, and the agile world into this world of citizen developer. Companies and individuals are continuously looking for new ways to improve the way that they can get work done. And that means that you have to be continuously innovating. And I've been really lucky, because I've seen lots of different companies apply different ways of kind of introducing innovation into their organization. And one that sort of, as you were talking, so really comes to mind was something that Telstra was doing, where they had created these little pods of innovation centers, and they would invest in those pods, give them complete autonomy from the rest of the Telstra. Telstra is a telco in Australia, and they'd given them this organization, these little pods, enough resources to be able to create some kind of pilot or create some kind of new way of working. But the objective was find something that kills Telstra. So find something that can compete against our existing products. But I'd rather own whatever it is that you come up with. Now, if you find something, then we should take a look at that, and maybe we should morph our major organization into that kind of service offering. If you can't find something, that tells me my products are relevant and continue to be relevant, etc. So I really like that kind of thinking. Within PMI, we've been very conscious, and certainly in the last 2 years, that we can't sit still and just rely on the PMP. The world of work is definitely changing. We wanted to leapfrog, and we want to become, our aspiration is to be like the go-to place for all things project. And I loved it when you said everything is a project, even organizing a holiday is a project, right? So, how can we as PMI, with this incredible heritage of 50 years of representing the profession, become the go-to place for all things project? But anytime somebody has an idea or a thought or a PowerPoint or a vision, how can they make that a reality? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the traditional way of project management. There are different ways. And so how do we learn about those? I've really instilled that kind of thinking in our organization, and in different ways. One way is a mindset shift. And you might hear now, as you start to talk to more and more project management folks across the globe, this concept of 10x. And what I mean by 10x is a mindset shift. What if we could, whatever we're talking about, what would it look like if it was 10 times bigger? What would it look like? What would it need to do if it was 10 times bigger? It doesn't necessarily have to be revenue or scale. It just 10x in thought process. If we want to create an impactful certification and we set a target at, I don't know, 100,000 in a year, certifications in a year, what would it look like? What would we need to do to make it 1 million? In that year. So just the mindset throughout the whole company has become, it took about 6 months, but within that 6 months, I'm seeing the results of it now, where in every conversation, somebody's going to say, okay, I get what we're trying to do now, but how can we amplify this? How can we make this 10x of it?
Right.
And so I think that innovation comes with a mindset shift. And if you allow people the opportunity to challenge conventional thinking, and COVID has given us the opportunity to do that now. I think people are much more susceptible to taking on change, which is something that, they weren't a few months back. We're grabbing the opportunity and we're trying to become super innovative. We're trying to lean really forward and saying, okay, where will innovation take us? And let's embrace it and let's try some new things.
Wow, that's super exciting. I couldn't agree more with you from a standpoint of really kind of almost that culture of experimentation where, you take on smaller projects, you really understand the impact, and then you try to tie that to the overall organizational vision where that's going. I think that's, like you said, it starts with people because, I talk to a lot of executives. We have a lot of projects going on the so quote unquote digital transformation, but digital transformation, it all starts with people transformation. You can't really modernize your systems without people being bought in to the vision. So it definitely resonates with what you're talking about as far as that. I like that framework of 10x mindset. It's really to be able to think outside the box, to think of different ways of doing things, and really looking at innovation, not something that's completely disruptive, but because it could be a small little improvement to an internal process.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting you said that, because we just are towards the end of our digital transformation. We were very lucky that we were actually in the midst of our digital transformation when COVID hit us, and that forced us to accelerate and cut through, some of the bureaucracy and some of the challenges that and things that just weren't relevant anymore because we had to move at pace. That really helped focus people's mind, and that's when you realize the power of people. When you're having to move at pace in actually in an unstructured environment where you don't really know what the outcome's going to be, and we're moving at pace. But interestingly, we implemented incredible technology that allows us to do fantastic things. But if the people don't know what those things are, it's a bit like sitting inside a really flashy car with all these knobs and whistles and bells and all sorts of things on your digital display, and not really knowing or using half of them because you just don't know what they can do and can't do. Right. So people make a massive difference in transformation, not only in the mindset, but also in their competencies and their skill sets to be able to apply and use the technology. I genuinely think that when I look at what we've done in PMI, we're probably using 10% of the capability of the technology that we have invested in. And I think it will grow over the next few years because it's new. But maybe in 4 or 5 years' time, we'll be using 60%. But, it's people that will be using it.
For sure. Right, absolutely. No, that's a great example. I love that. And, can't wait to learn a little bit more about the new technologies that are coming out at PMI. That's super exciting. So from, you were sharing with us a little bit more about your background from kind of being very entrepreneurial. You had your startup, you were working with startups as well, which is, super exciting to me. I've had multiple startups. I'm actually working on one right now where we're building a technology for staffing space. But all that aside, curious to pick your brain on what's exciting to Sunil. What are the different trends and ideas that you're very passionate about these days? What do you think will be the next big thing? What are you looking to invest in, perhaps? It doesn't have to be management. Just trying to pick the brain of Sunil on kind of what are you mostly excited about?
Do you know what? It's an interesting topic, and I'm interested in lots and lots of different things, but I have the privilege to sit on a number of sort of boards or forums actually, where there are a lot of CEOs on those forums. And there was one that I was sitting on a few days ago where there was a number of very serious CEOs on that. And when I say serious, I mean really large organizations like the CEO of Pfizer, the CEO of Levi Strauss, CEO of IBM.
Wow.
And many, many more, and we were all breaking out into sessions and talking about what is really important right now. And we came up with a list of like 15, and then everyone got back together again, and they said, okay, well, what was your top one out of your little cohort that you discussed? Yeah. And in my cohort was the CEO of Sanofi, which is a pharmaceutical firm in France, Levi Strauss, the CEO of Ernst & Young, and myself. So, pretty, and I was like a minnow compared to these guys. But interestingly, the topics were the same, right? And we came up with 15 topics. And sorry, I'm leading up to this, but
no, I love it.
But the incredible thing was, I've got the list here right in front of me. Beating COVID was number one. Equal opportunities for all, climate change, health and wellness, the empathy, the purpose, deeper social commitments, the fixing the digital divide, authentic collaboration, empathy, mental health, building trust. So we went through this whole list. Now, I did not hear the word profit. I did not hear the word shareholder value. I did not hear, after 90-minute conversations with these guys who are under tremendous pressure from their shareholders to keep the company going and perform results, yet their mind is shifted to all of this humanity, really, climate change. And so what interests me is this pivot that's going on right now, where the world is almost been shocked into realizing that, okay, it's important to have economic wealth. It's important to address your shareholders, but people matter. The planet matters. Purpose matters. So I like that. So that's the kind of thing that's really, I'm enjoying this realization that's happening, that that success is not just economic based. Success is making a difference. Success is being responsible. And I love the way that the world is hoping to that it's going to shift in this new way, that it's going to build itself back up again. I think PMI and the Project Management Institute play a huge part in that, because we're a purpose-driven organization. We're not for profits. We really we embrace the the United Nations SDGs, try and make as big, 1/3 of our workforce focused is purely 100% on giving back. A third of the workforce. That's significant. So the things that really excite me, I love this conversation that's going on right now between, are we going to become completely automated, and are the machines going to take over? Is it going to be Terminator, and where the machines are going to try and take over humans? Or is it going to be Iron Man, where machines are going to work with humans to create something that's better than the human on its own and the machine on its own? So, i.e. a machine with conscience, like Iron Man. So I love this kind of discussion that's going on now. Where are people going to play? I love also trying to figure out now what are going to be the key components of the way work is done in the future. I mean, organizations are looking to be able to pivot on a dime. I like to call it gymnastic. They need to be beyond agile. They need to be able to pivot. They need to be able to springboard. They need to be able to do somersaults and look good while they're doing it, and look in control while they're doing it. But at the same time, they have a workforce that they have to protect and look after. And some of that workforce may not be able to do that, and then there's contractors out there that probably can, and who are much more seasoned. So is there going to be a change in the mix of employees and contractors? Uberization is the term I heard yesterday. Are we seeing Uberization of the workforce? Right. Fantastic conversation. Where are we going with that? Today, a lot of, employment law gives a lot of protection to employees, right? And contractors don't get the benefit of that. Right. But then the contractors come with point solutions that you don't have to invest in the employees to tap into. And if companies want to become gymnastic, they need to be able to tap into those. As minute they see something that's happening, they need to be able to respond. Perhaps they can't wait to keep their people moving. And technology and ways of working is moving so fast that maybe, there's a different mix of people that you need. I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. It's a white sheet of paper. Right. COVID has caused a reboot, and I get excited by knowing where we're going, and the fact that the Project Management Institute is up front and central in some of the thought leadership that's going on today.
Right. Well, I love this. We could probably spend the rest of the podcast talking about this. Very exciting trends, definitely. And I love the example on the forum where you participated with a lot of thought leaders, coming together, discussing these ideas. So that's super exciting. And then one thing that you touched upon, which is, very dear to my heart, because when we talk about contingent workforce, from the contractor perspective, consultants, right now we're building technology specific for that space, because mainly we're investing into that trend. We see a lot of potential there. I've been there myself. I've been a contractor, for many different organizations, and for companies to be very, nimble, agile, flexible, like you said, almost like Olympic gymnastics,
Yeah.
to be able to adapt to different trends. I think that becomes such an important element of that when it comes to workforce management. So that's super exciting. I love that. And then the other aspect that you touched upon is the whole kind of the relationship with advanced technologies. When we talk about machine learning, artificial intelligence, RPA, I wrote an article last year. I write for Forbes, that was the topic around how to build that recession-proof, career strategy that also has, from a standpoint of the automation perspective. So I would love to get your take on the thoughts, especially around project management. It's a topic that's ongoing. It never dies, and it's always exciting to talk about that. How do you think these technologies will impact, whether positively or negatively, and in any way, the project management trade, be able to coexist, to collaborate, and actually drive that?
I think that I think you're going to see a proliferation of projects. I think that's the first thing. I think we call it the project economy. I think technology is going to enable project managers to become even more impactful. I think their scope of work will change as a result of that. I mean, the scheduling and the automated, repeatable tasks, I think technology will take care of. And I think that organizations will look for much more human skills from project managers. And in fact, I think that the skills that project managers bring to the table today are actually required beyond project management. If you look at the project management market, if you like, people that have got the word project management in their job title, there's about 45 million of them across the globe. But if you look at how many change makers there are, people that trigger change or make change happen, the market is 750 million. So there are 750 million people that organizations are going to be tasking to say, hey, stand me back up again after what's just happened to me because of COVID. My business is going to be different. My processes are going to be different. My technology I've just embraced at the speed of light. I'm not really sure what it can do and what it can't do, but I just had to get it. Now make something new for me. And so those change makers are going to be tasked with the same kind of requirements that project managers are going to make. So that means that the PMI Institute has the opportunity to grow, not 10x, but I think 17x, if not even more, 20x, right? Because there's all these change makers that are going to be asking for help, and we can help them. And governments and academia and enterprises are looking at organizations like ours to say, how can you help me enable my team fast? And it doesn't matter whether they're sitting in a PMO or whether they're sitting in finance or in HR, they're all executing on some form of transformation. It's not like when you do projects within an organization of digital transformation touches every single part of an organization and every single person, from the call center person to the receptionist, right? So everybody's going to become a change maker. So I think that technology will play a big role. Also, ways of working. Companies are trying to expand the use of agile beyond software and IT into the enterprise, to become the agile enterprise. We are saying, actually, you need to go beyond that. You want to become hyper agile. Right. You almost want to become, you want to be able to do instant change. That would be the ideal. And, if you could do instant change, if you could do real-time change. And that's where this world of citizen developer and this concept of citizen developer is taking us. And PMI is at the front end of that right now, as you probably read about. How people who have not trained in application development, coding languages, but can still use technology to create solutions and applications without the need to know the code. It's a bit like Alexa. When you just say to Alexa, hey, tell me what's the time or what's the weather like in Philadelphia, it will tell you, but you don't know how it's worked that out. You don't really need to know all the technology that goes behind making it go out and do that search, find out what the temperature is in Philly, come back and tell you and convert it into sound and then send it to you. You don't need to know all of that. All you need to know is, hey, what's the temperature in Philly, or what time's my flight check-in, or whatever,
Right.
And I think that technology will enable people in this way, even in the way work is done in the future. So So I think it's very exciting times, to be honest, John, as we go forward.
Right, right, absolutely. No, I love this, mainly because, and I've been preaching this for a very long time. Not necessarily preaching, but it's just my stance on the reason I've chose this as a career as well is, I honestly do believe from project management standpoint, it's not just, managing schedules and durations and, resource allocation, all of that. It's, the role has evolved so much where, automate, it's almost immune to any automation from a standpoint that a project manager is very almost a strategic partner to to an executive team, to development teams, to all the groups within the organization, where you have to act as an advisor rather than just running around putting project plans together. It's really kind of taking a lot of that stakeholder management, that communication aspect of being that at the center that brings everything together. I think to me, that's one of the biggest values that we as project managers bring, and to be able to highlight and, hone in on those skills rather than, that's a little bit more niche from, the tools that you use. I think there's a huge potential for project managers to really evolve from that standpoint rather than viewing advanced technologies as more of a threat to the
Exactly.
in general.
And just to add to that, and just to echo what you're saying, so you may have heard that one of the things that PMI was heavily focused on was this brand that we call Brightline, which was really focused around strategy. And then we pivoted from strategy and the chief strategy officer to the chief transformation officer. Today, there isn't a certification, if you like, for a chief transformation officer. There is for a CFO, and there is for for chief marketing officer and so on and so forth. But for the chief transformation officer, there isn't anything that's out there.
Right.
And when you look, and the chief transformation officer is not the chief strategy officer. The strategy officer is the chap who's coming up with the the concepts, the ideas, the direction, the market research that tells you where you need to go as a company, perhaps.
Yeah.
The transformation officer is the person that's going to get you there. Is going to put the systems and processes in place. It's really like a very high level PMO or project manager, right?
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've created the line in Brightline is the line from the project manager to the chief transformation officer. And that journey, we've created a series of certifications, micro certs, that start with the project manager in mind, and then build layers on top of that, the skill sets required to take you on the journey to become a chief transformation officer. And when you map out that journey, you realize actually a lot of skill sets are what we call today power skills, right? They're the skills required for like empathetic understanding of your customer, the voice of your customer, having empathy with your employees, strong communication, a whole bunch of soft skills that are required over and above the technology, over and above the structure, over and above the method and the governance and so on and so forth, that can take you on this journey eventually. And we have the OPT, it's called Organizational Transformation 1, that's just been released. Wow. And we've got 2 and 3 and 4, and eventually you'll get to, and then maybe perhaps what we might do is just bring them all together as to one and say, right, there's your certification. If an organization is looking for a chief transformation officer, here's a person who's got PMP, so grounded in getting work done, turning ideas into reality, and then layered on top of that, all the special skills required to make them a chief transformation officer with the right kind of thought leadership to support it. So we're going in that journey, John.
Oh, I love this. It's exciting. I think it's so relevant, especially when, as project managers, there's always that thought like, what is next for me? What is my career path? What's my growth strategy from a standpoint, whether I'm part of a larger organization, how do I progress from that standpoint, or whether I'm leading my startup and how do I apply those skills? So that's super exciting that you guys are working on that type of roadmap from career growth perspective with that vision. What's that kind of end goal almost? I think there's a lot of value in that. And the other point that you made on that micro certifications is these days we've seen this emerging trend out of, especially in pandemic, where this micro learning, platforms is really what's really succeeding these days, where people's attention span is just, with the social media and everything is like non-existent. So when you talk about training courses, certification courses, all of that, it's everything on the micro level. That how do you deliver the most impactful information in the most, concise, packed, shortest manner. So that's exciting to hear that you guys have that type of, initiatives within the organization that really going to help project managers, excel and build that career path.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at PMI now versus where it was 2 years ago, there's been mass transformation. So 2 years ago, we were largely the PMP and a few sort of bolt-on certifications that were interesting and that actually added a bit more value than just the PMP, i.e., the PGMP and so on and so forth, and then a few specializations in risk and things like that. But we were largely a single product association, if you like, if I could call it a product. 2 years on, we are multi-product. We've got we've made an acquisition in the agile space. So we're now got very strong thought leaders in the world of agile. We're going one step further into the world of citizen developer and creating the structure and the guidance and the guardrails for effective citizen developer and no code, low code. That's the new way of working. We've moved into design thinking with wicked problem solving. So we become multi-product now. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, we're going beyond the project manager. We want to hit the change makers because we know they need our help. Yeah. So our market's changing. For 50 years, we've been nurturing project managers, and if we get it wrong, they'll be the first ones to tell us, but they'll give us a lot of mileage to get it right because we've known them for 50 years. When you move into the new world or a new market, they're not going to give you the same size runway. So we have to be spot on. When we go and start talking to the marketing people or the finance people about getting work done, unless we are completely, spot on in our thought leadership, they won't give us the same size runway. So that's a risk that we're taking, but it's an important one. And then also we're going multi-region. So within 2 years, we've moved into a regional model. We used to be everything is in Philly and everything is designed in Philly, to now we've got 8 regions around the world with 8 managing directors, and each one of them close to their local region, talking about what's happening in that specific. Africa is very, very different to Latin America, is very different to North America. So, the nuances by geography as well. And then specialization of skill sets as well. So we've morphed in 2 years, John, to a very, dynamic, multifaceted organization. It's very exciting times.
And I'll tell you, I wasn't sure how to bring up that particular topic, in a sensitive way, without, offending anyone or anything from this standpoint. But I'm so glad that you're talking about this transformation through the past 2 years, because, being in project management trade, PMI has always been kind of that governing board and, the sounding board almost. Sure. But I definitely, I echo majority of the kind of the opinions about the PMI through the past, 5 years, beyond just the last 2 years, that things have gotten a little bit stale almost, where it was all about the PMP and just maintaining the PDUs. There wasn't a lot of, innovation per se that project management trade needed. And, that's super exciting what you're talking about, in the sense that really going just beyond the one single product certification organization, where you're now actually looking at that being that multi-platform, for just project leadership in general, where you're not just developing, the managers of the projects, it's more the actual leaders within the organization. So that's super exciting. I'm very pumped about it. And,
I am too. And, I really do think that we can become the Wikipedia of all things project. I would love us to be almost like a household name. If you want anything done, if you've got a project done, we want to be a digital organization. We want to almost be like the Google,
for sure,
engine with the best practices, the best thing, regardless of where you are in your career. You could be a CTO, you could be a finance person, you could be a student, and you will find value in this. We call that 5 to 75, and it doesn't have to stop at 75. I know people go on for much longer than that. I hope I do anyway. And but 5 to 75, we want to be relevant. So a lot of credit goes to the board of directors of PMI, who I think for a long time had been envisaging this, acceleration of change. And when I joined, I was very lucky that the board were susceptible. We're happy to take on some of the ideas. We changed the brand, then the branding within 6 months of me joining, right? And, That made a huge difference. And of course, you have some people who love it and some people
It
who
was
don't.
needed. It was very,
Yeah,
very.
yeah. The idea, it was really sending a message to the world. It was needed anyway, but it was sending a message to the world that we are going to be all different colors, all different shapes, all different sizes. You know, we're going to be going broader, bigger, deeper, and we've got the ambition and the appetite to do it. So,
Right.
and the board is behind me, and we're going to try and give it a go. And we'll stumble here and there, you know, and COVID and things like that will get in the way. And but you know, we're on a mission. We're going to do
Oh,
it.
I love that, and I love that. We part of our organization, me and my partner, we put together a lot of these micro learning training courses for project management, and it all evolves around kind of that practical aspect of the project management, where it's just breaking that mold, that you're not just there to manage the schedules and run around and ask when you're going to finish a certain task. It's really just being that strategic advisor and really developing those leadership skills. And it's almost also becoming, you mentioned that several times, from emotional intelligence perspective, really be able to kind of be almost that psychologist at the end of the day, to understand what people are coming from, and really help them put into that that mindset, how to succeed in a particular situation. I think that's the role of project managers just evolving and evolving. So that's exciting to hear all the initiatives you driving.
We did. We flipped to. I mean, most organizations, in fact, all organizations, probably flipped to a hybrid model of home working and working. You know, in the office. We were in the middle of our digital transformation, and we had to flip the whole organization, 100% of the organization, to home working, which meant our call centers, everything meant, our accounting, everything,
Yeah.
all of the projects we were working on, all people started working from home.
Uh-huh.
Our project managers had to learn new skills very, very fast, because people brought their work home. That was intrusive to the other family members. If they were living with family members, they were stuck in rooms for days on end, and, popping out just to eat and then coming back again. A very different world. You couldn't read people's body language. You couldn't tell whether they were stressed. You didn't know whether they could really commit to something. Conversations were being done serially.
Yeah.
So I would speak, and then after I finished, someone else would speak, and then someone else would speak. It wasn't like a natural conversation where you're just chatting, in a room together. So brainstorming became tougher. So these are, the people that stood out of the crowd when this was happening were the project managers.
Yeah.
Because they knew how to deal with people, they knew how to deal with scheduling, they knew how to deal with planning, they knew how to deal with resources, they knew when things were perhaps not going the way they needed to go. They were fantastic at communicating. They were great at, highlighting issues before they arise, and all that will stay. And all that is super relevant. And that's, organizations want that across their whole organization. Fantastic skill set.
Wow. Right. Absolutely. And that was kind of one of my next questions that I had for you, as far as coming out of the pandemic, as far as that's almost that evolution of the project manager in this space, where we all had to adapt, like you said. And, to your point, really project managers kind of really coming out of this as almost in leadership roles, where you have to bring the people together, where with everything done virtually and remotely, that type of skill set becomes, like you were saying, 10x, where you have to be able to read the people's communication styles, where you have to bring the groups together and still try to maintain that effectiveness when it comes to communication and collaboration. I think that's very interesting. What do you think will be, kind of from your standpoint, as far as the trends that now we're in that kind of the second stretch of the pandemic, and that impacting the overall workforce or project management in general? Where do you see things going? What's your vision into that space?
Well, first of all, I mean, big caveat, whether, what my thought leadership, it could be completely wild. But let me tell you a few things that I am hearing. First of all, for sure, home working and virtual working, it doesn't have to be home working, it can be working anywhere. It doesn't have to be home working. Working from anywhere is like a genie that's been released from the bottle. And I don't think it'll go back into the bottle. I think it's out now. And I think that people have realized that you can do this remotely. But I don't think that that's going to become the default way of working. I was reading a report with an IT firm. I can't remember which firm it was, but they did a survey in February 2020 and asked their employees, would you like to work from home permanently? And 80% said, yes, we'd love to work from home permanently in February 2020. They asked the same question in June 2020, and 60% of the people said, yeah, we'd love to work from home. And then they did the same exercise in December 2020, end of the year, just gone. And only 30% people said that they want to work from home. So it's gone from 80% to 60% to 30%. And then there are some companies, once they do get back into a working environment, working in an office, you might find for the first 6 months, they love it. And then they want to go back to the home environment. So my point is, nobody really knows what the outcome is. You nailed it when you said people need to be extremely adaptive. People will need to be super nimble. People need to be agile. People need to try new ideas and pivot fast. They need to be gymnastic. They need they need to be able to, organizations will need to be able to pivot. So I think that we'll move to some kind of hybrid model. I think the default, I originally thought the default would be everyone works from home, because there's a lot of benefit. You don't have to be then locked into a particular region. You can tap into resources from all over the world if you're working remotely.
Yeah.
So there's lots of benefit. But I do think people need human interaction as well. So I think a lot of people are tending towards the default being working from home and then coming into the offices for meetings and things like that. I actually think it might be the other way around. I actually think it will be default is office work, but you can work from home if it makes sense for you to do so. That empathy will be there. That's the first thing. I think the second thing is there'll be multiple ways of working. I think the world is moving to a more projectified way. I think there'll be a huge shift in social responsibility. I think the way businesses are valued in the future will include more than just the commercial outcomes, but also how are those organizations creating their wealth? Is it socially responsible? What is their carbon footprint? What is their attitude towards workforces in different countries, and so on and so forth. So I think that is taking quite a center stage at the moment in the minds of a lot of CEOs. And then finally, I think that there may be some Uberization going on with the workforce. I can see that happening. I think companies will ask for it. They'll say, we need that flexibility. We need that ability to move. I cannot. And then the downside of that will be culture. How do you maintain the culture in the company if you're just reliant 100% on contractors, right? So I don't think it'll ever go to 100%. But, my point is take the extremes and work out what the implications are, and then work to a balance in the middle. So three key areas. I think some form of hybrid model, working environment for the future. Embracing of technology, obviously, to do that. Hyper agile environment, multi-projects across organizations. I think that's going to happen. And I think a huge social bias, not bias in the negative sense, but attending towards social responsibility. I think that's already happening and will continue at pace. So they're the kind of things that I'm looking at as I try to reinvent and stand up PMI in the new norm.
Towards that, wow, that's that's exciting, and thank you for providing kind of this almost like compartmentalized view into these different trends that a lot of us are experiencing these days. And I can definitely relate to a lot of things that we're experiencing with us helping organizations with, from a staffing perspective, find the project managers or the development resources when it comes to that hybrid model, to be able to operate not only 100% remote, but it also provide the opportunities for the workforce to experience that face-to-face interaction, that office setting. So that's super exciting. And then the overall kind of Uberization, that, as you call that, from contingent workforce perspective, I think that trend is also definitely going to grow more and more as companies face that need to be a lot more nimble from that standpoint. Sunil, from your personal perspective, what are your sources of learning? What are your sources of information? Share with us Sunil's content diet, as I like to call it. What do you consume on a daily basis? What's in your bookmarks? Whether that's a blog or whether that's a Twitter profile that you follow. Tell us a little bit more about that.
So sure. So I won't give all my secrets away, but a few of them. I really enjoy. I read a fair bit, but I enjoy conversation, and I love getting onto these forums. And I would recommend there are a lot of forums out there now because everyone's trying to battle their thinking around what is the future going to look like right now. It's great. There's some fantastic conversations. There's some really poor ones as well, but I try and get on some very good sessions. I really particularly like the Fortune CEO session that I'm on at the moment, where there's a lot of CEOs on that. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I do some good work with Fortune, working with the United Nations. I love looking at what they're talking about, the World Economic Forum and Davos. The Economist is actually quite good as well. I think that there's a lot of people that are. I mean, we are in some serious situations right now. There's no doubt about that. But it's very easy to glamorize some of them as well. So I do like to talk to people that are a bit more grounded, and maybe that's the project management side of me coming out. But I do like to speak to people. Of course, we can see there may be a cliff edge there, and there may be some inevitability in some of the things that are going. But that doesn't stop you from thinking about what the art of the possible could be. So I'm an avid follower of Harvard Business Review. I love some of the topics on that. I've been reading some. It's quite difficult reading, but the Lancet, because of all of this COVID stuff that's going on, and there's so much fake news around it as well. So I'm trying to go to the British Medical Journal and the Lancet that tends to. I probably understand 30% of what they're saying in there because it's very scientific, but enough for me to be able to get a sort of informed view, which is quite good. I'm really privileged that PMI has got some incredible thought leaders that we work with, Thinkers 50, the Drucker Forum.
Yeah.
I'm always talking with people that are far more smarter than I am. And there's one particular guy that I will call out, and that's Professor Tabrizi from Stanford University. He's worked on many different transformations in his life. He actually helped write the Bright Line book and the Transformation Compass, and I've done a fair few transformations in my life as well. But this guy is off the scale in terms of thinking, things to think about. So Professor Tabrizi is one person that gives me a lot of inspiration and is a thought leader. But there are many. Thinkers 50 organization also has some amazing folks that challenge you daily when you and are happy for a debate. I'm much more of a practical guy, and I don't consider myself a thought leader. I sort of jump on the back of other people and other people's concepts, but I'm always ready for a hearty conversation.
Awesome. Wow, I love this. I love these recommendations, and we'll make available in the episode notes. And personally, from a standpoint of kind of that content diet perspective, I've seen a great emergence of these kind of this almost solopreneurs that create content from, like, Substack is a great example where people now can launch their own, newsletters and focus on particular niche areas and really express their opinions and, actually monetize that from a standpoint of, I'm really going to put in a significant effort into research of what I put out there. And I'm only going to target very niche tunnel of people that are only interested in that particular space. So I've seen a lot of really cool kind of, content materials and really coming out of that. So, but also a lot of the great resources that you mentioning from the, the Thinkers 50 and, the HBR and all of that great stuff. Lots of great content from that standpoint. Last question I have for you, Sunil, is and it's not to come across as I'm promoting anything on none of this, is pandemic has been very interesting for me in the sense that I had a lot of great, just like with everyone, had a great opportunity to reflect and kind of get my thoughts together. And a lot of that has, was around project management, my experience, and what are some of the things that have worked well for me, or even some areas where I had really failed. So me and my colleague, we kind of got together and we said, why don't we put these kind of thoughts together into written content? So kind of, we just came out with like the book, the PMI.
Right.
So it's still in a draft mode. We're going through a lot of stuff, but the reason I mentioned that is there's probably a lot of, professionals or thought leaders, that going through very similar, cycles where they think of different ways of doing things and they put out materials and they create content from that standpoint. And just, I know it's a very long preview to a very simple question, but in terms of what are you currently reading, and what is maybe is there one book that you always recommend to others, and why is that?
Yes, actually.
Library.
Yeah, I'm just where is it? Where is it? Just finished reading it. I actually I can't find it now. Okay, so I was reading two books. I don't know where it's gone. Oh, there it is. Hold on, I got it.
Yeah.
So these are the two books that I was reading. And I'm not going to advertise. Well, I mean, this is not an advertisement.
For sure.
So one of them is called Becoming a 3D CEO. And it's by a guy called Luis Alvarez Salvatore. He was the CEO of British Telecom's enterprise business. And it's an interesting book. I mean, he's a good friend of mine. And so I promised I'd read it. But it's got some great content and great experience. At the same time, and I quite like doing this contrasting, is I'm reading this book by Deepak Chopra. I have read this book, Deepak Chopra, which is called Why is God Laughing? And it's really a sort of humorous look at a very serious situation. But the great thing about Deepak Chopra is that he's actually quite optimistic, and he's quite spiritual as well. And whilst this book is all about managing risk and structure and how to be able to do this guy's talking at a higher level. And I love reading both these books at the same time. So I wouldn't recommend, I mean, I think that, you get to a third of this book or half a way through this book and say, okay, there's not a lot in here. It's actually quite cold because it's very structure orientated. This book is very rich, and it will get you reading chapters over and over and over again. It's an old book, Why is God Laughing? And so what am I reading right now? I'm reading these two books. Will I even write my own book one day? Maybe, I don't know, if I get the time. And then when I do write my own book, that is the book to read.
That's right. We'll keep an eye out for that, and definitely let us know when that comes together. Definitely would love to check that out. And I appreciate these recommendations. We'll make those available in episode notes for our listeners to check those out as well. Sunil, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It was a very insightful conversation. Very, a lot of these topics I'm very passionate, so I could probably spend the entire day recording this. But I realize how busy you are innovating the PMI and taking the project management trade to the whole new level. So definitely appreciate the great insights, and definitely going to stay in touch with you.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful. Thanks for giving me the opportunity and the stage to talk a little bit about my life. I really appreciate it. Thank you.